on the line, and Dean is the Technical Manager for the Energy Star Certified Homes Program. Before we get started, I do want to tell you about the GoToWebinar interface. On the right side of your screen, you'll see your GoToWebinar control panel, and you can expand or collapse it by clicking the arrow. We do recommend calling in using a telephone. We have heard that the sound quality is a lot better if you do it that way. And to do that, you can select the Use Telephone button and follow your specific dial-in instructions on the panel. If you do decide to listen through your computer, you can select Use Mic and Speakers. We will be taking questions at the end of today's presentation, and you can submit your questions through the questions pane on the control panel. Feel free to enter them as we go along, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dean to get things started. So Dean, you should have control.
Thanks, Charlie. All right. So welcome, everyone. My name is Dean Gamble, and I'm the Technical Manager for the Energy Star Certified Homes Program. And today we'll be talking about Revision 8, the latest improvements to our program. Now, we've gotten a lot of input from our partners, and our team has been hard at work on this for a while, so I'm really glad that it's finally out the door and that partners are starting to get exposed to it. So let me quickly run through our agenda, and then we'll dive right in. First, I want to start with an introduction to Revision 8. Second, we'll discuss the top changes you need to be aware of as an HVAC professional. This will be the bulk of our webinar. Third, we'll walk through the updated process for certifying a home and the role that you'll play as an HVAC professional. And finally, we'll discuss next steps, including additional resources to help you succeed. So let's get started with that agenda. And to begin, I want to talk about a quick introduction for Revision 8. When we talk about a revision to our program, we mean an update that clarifies, simplifies, and improves the program. It's driven entirely by partner feedback, and after 2 full years of implementing version 3, we've gotten quite a bit of that from our partners, and most of the feedback is centered around 3 key concerns. The first concern was too much paperwork. So this is actually a photograph that one HVAC designer emailed me with all their design documentation. No, just kidding about that, of course, but I know more than one partner felt this way, trying to fill out all the paperwork needed to certify a home. So first concern, too much paperwork. The second concern we heard quite a bit about was a challenging workflow. It felt like one wrong step, even at the very end of the process, could imperil the entire certification. So this poor guy in the photo is also dealing with a challenging process, and it looks like he's carrying a fan, but it's really just the manual J's for all the homes he's trying to certify. So second concern, challenging workflow, and third concern was that more HVAC training and resources were needed by all partners to be successful. So for too many of them, raters, builders, and even some designers and contractors, the HVAC requirements were as foreign to them as trying to fly a spaceship to the moon. So if you're one of the partners that has provided some of this feedback to us, thank you. It has really helped us improve the program. And if you've just kept it bottled up inside, just know that you're not alone. So with Revision 8, we've tried to tackle these top 3 concerns. Now, before we dive into the top changes in Revision 8, I want to first give you a quick visual tour. Even though you might not be responsible for completing or collecting every document, it's helpful to understand what Revision 8 looks like for everyone involved. So first, the HVAC system QI contractor checklist, which is the main document that HVAC professionals have been working with, has been split into 2 documents. The HVAC design report, which contains the design-related items and will continue to be completed by the HVAC designer, and the HVAC commissioning checklist, which contains the commissioning-related items and will continue to be completed by a credentialed HVAC contractor for each system. Second, let's talk about the rater inspection checklists. As HVAC professionals, you won't deal with these directly, but they do contain HVAC-related requirements for the rater, so it's helpful to know that they exist. The thermal enclosure system and the HVAC system rater checklists have also been split into 2 documents in Revision 8. The rater design review checklist contains all the items the rater can complete at the design stage. It's just a half a page long. And the rater field checklist contains all the items to be completed in the field during construction. It's 1 page front and back. And finally, the water management system builder checklist has been repurposed is the Water Management System Builder Requirements. This contains details that builders have to meet to ensure that water drains off of a roof, down a wall, and away from the foundation, and it includes several items to ensure that moisture inside the house is also managed, like showers, tubs, and HVAC drain pans. So here's a summary of each document name in Revision 7 and in Revision 8. And most importantly for you, as we just discussed, the HVAC system QI contractor checklist that you've come to know and love has been split into the HVAC design report and the HVAC commissioning checklist. For a more detailed visual tour of the changes we made, you can check out our new crosswalk resource. A portion of it is shown here, and what we've done is taken the Rev 7 checklists and added this blue box to the right to show where each item was relocated in Revision 8, or if it was removed altogether. Okay, now it's time to dive into the details. We're going to discuss the top changes you need to be aware of in Revision 8 as an HVAC designer or a contractor. And first, Charlie's going to discuss the changes on the design side, and then I'll come back and discuss the changes on the commissioning side. So take it away, Charlie.
Great. Thank you, Dean. So let's start with the HVAC design report. And as the name suggests, this contains all of the items that the HVAC designer needs to complete. And it's divided into 5 sections that are listed here: the design overview, the whole house mechanical ventilation design, the room-by-room heating and cooling loads, the heating and cooling equipment selection, and the duct design. So the first section of the HVAC design report contains the design overview. It contains 6 pretty straightforward items that include the designer's name, company, and the date of the design, who the designer is providing these services to, either the builder or the credentialed HVAC contractor who will be installing the system, the area that the system will serve, and if the design is for a dedicated cooling system for temporary occupant loads. And in almost all cases, the answer will be no. And finally, you'll indicate which kind of design you've completed. And let's spend a little bit more time on this last item, the type of design that was completed. So there are 2 design types. The first is a site-specific design, and by that we mean an HVAC design created for a specific plan, elevation, set of options, orientation, and county. So this is the ideal situation, and it's most common in custom homes today, though more production builders are actually moving in this direction. The second type is a group design, and by that we mean an HVAC design created for a plan that's intended to be built with potentially different configurations. That is to say, different elevations, options, or even orientations. And this is more common in the production environment today. Now there's no wrong answer here. We just need you to indicate which design type you've completed. And regardless of whether you do a site-specific design or a group design, you must meet the following tolerances that are laid out here. So the occupants used in the load must be within 2 of the number that's used in the rater's energy model. The conditioned floor area used in the load must be 0 to 300 square feet larger than the number used in the rater's energy model. The window area used in the load must be 0 to 60 square feet larger than the number used in the rater's energy model. And the load variation across all orientations must be less than 6 kBTU hours. So designers can visit the website on this slide for a free optional tool that will assist them in grouping options to meet these tolerances. So within this context, we can revisit that item 1.6 and show you how it might look for a group design. So here the designer indicates that they've completed a group design for the Monarch plan. They looked at all the options, elevations, and orientations and found that they met the tolerances that we described on the last slide. So they've created one group design for this plan, and they've written down the configuration that they used in the load calculations. So if the Monarch plan had so many options and elevations that these tolerances weren't met, then the designer would split them into one or more group and complete the report for each group that they've created. So now let's turn our attention to the second section of the HVAC design report, the whole house mechanical ventilation design. And within this, there are 5 subsections: the airflow of the system, the ventilation system type and its controls, the sound rating of the ventilation fan, the efficiency of the ventilation system, and for ventilation systems that specify air inlets, the requirements for those inlets. While these items were already required or implied in most cases, consolidating them makes it a lot easier for the designer to ensure they've all been met. We're not going to discuss each of these subsections today in the interest of time, however. But the key takeaways are that the ventilation design can now be documented in one section right on the report, and that completing these sections will help ensure that you're meeting the ventilation requirements of the ENERGY STAR program, and actually increasingly with code. The third section of the report is for documenting your room-by-room heating and cooling loads. And this is quite similar to the last revision, so I just want to highlight the 2 biggest changes. The first has to do with the outdoor design temperatures used in heating and cooling loads. So selecting these temperatures and verifying that the correct temperatures have been selected has been more difficult than it should be for a variety of reasons. So to address this, we've mapped every weather station in the country from Manual J and ASHRAE, and for every county in the country, identified the highest available cooling temperature and the lowest available heating temperature. And the result of this is this: a table that tells you what the ENERGY STAR design temperature limits are for every county in the country. So if you know what state and county the home will be built in, then just by consulting this table, excuse me, you'll know the cooling temperature limit and the heating temperature limit for the home built in that county. So this table can be found at energystar.gov/HVAC design temps, the link that's on this page. And in addition, starting with revision 8, if a designer wants to use anything outside of these temperature limits, they'll make that request to us directly rather than to the rater. And that should help reduce some of the friction that raters are experiencing today with regard to design temperature selection. Now, here's a really important point that's easily missed. The temperature that we list for each county is the limit. And what do I mean by that? Well, the cooling limit is the highest temperature you're allowed to use to certify the home. So for example, if you have a county with a cooling temperature limit of 95 degrees, then a temperature above 95 degrees is not allowed to be used, but any temperature of 95 or lower is allowed. And the heating limit is the lowest temperature you're allowed to use to certify the home. So for example, if you have a county with a heating temperature limit of 15 degrees Fahrenheit, then the temperature below 15 degrees is not allowed to be used, but any temperature of 15 degrees or higher is fine. And here's one more point about design temperatures. If you have a plan that will be built with multiple counties, within multiple counties, the same design report can be used in all of those counties as long as the temperature limits are met. So for example, you might build a plan in 6 counties, and you look at the cooling design temperatures, temperature limits in all 6 of those counties, and it turns out that you have 2 counties with a limit of 90 degrees, 3 have a limit of 91 degrees, and 1 has a limit of 92 degrees. Now if you use a cooling design temperature of 90 degrees or below the limit in all 6 counties, that means that you can use a single report in all 6 counties, if that makes sense. So again, it's a limit. So if you're below at 90 or below, it satisfies the requirements for all 6 of the counties, even if their particular design temperatures allow you to go higher. So revisiting the HVAC design report, you simply need to list the county and state selected and the cooling season or heating season outdoor design temperatures that you used in your loads. And as long as these temperatures are within the limits for the county where the home will be certified, then you're good to go. Now the second area I want to highlight in the room-by-room heating and cooling load section has to do with the orientation of the home. So you can see that the new report includes loads for multiple orientations on a single report. That should greatly reduce the paperwork for a production environment. The only caveat is that you need to verify that the variation in loads across the orientations is 6 or less kBTU hours. If it's not, you'll need to split the orientations into 2 or more groups until you meet this requirement. And then you can fill out one HVAC design report for each of these groups. Now, a final note, if you're doing site-specific design where you know exactly which orientation the home will be built in, then you only need to provide the loads for that one orientation. You can leave all of the other orientations listed blank in that case. Okay, great. Now, the fourth of 5 sections is for documenting your heating and cooling equipment selection. This is also quite similar to the last revision, so I just want to highlight one change, and that's the cooling and heating sizing limits. So to improve the clarity and enforcement of these limits, they have been aligned with the new version of ACA Manual S. So in addition, the phrase next nominal size has been removed and replaced with quantitative allowances. So let's take a closer look at the cooling equipment sizing limits first. The new version of Manual S defines cooling sizing limits based on the compressor type and the equipment type and climate condition. Now, I recognize this is a bit more complex, but it provides more appropriate and generous oversizing limits for certain types and climate conditions. So nearly all of the equipment used in ENERGY STAR homes today will fall into this box that I've highlighted here. Here we recommend that the equipment capacity be 90 to 115% of the cooling load, but we allow the capacity to be up to 130%. So remember, this numeric allowance replaces the more subjective next nominal size allowance that we used to have. Additionally, the furnace equipment sizing limits are relatively simple, and they are just dependent on whether the furnace will be used for heating only or if it's paired with a cooling system. Finally, an alternative allowance has also been added for cooling equipment serving low load spaces. For a system match up with a single speed compressor and a space load of 15 or less kBTU hours, a total equipment capacity of up to 20 kBTUh is allowed. And for a system match up with a 2-speed or variable speed compressor and a space load of 18 or less kBTUh, a total equipment capacity up to 25 kBTUh is allowed. Now, the fifth and final section is for documenting your duct design. Primarily, we've just grouped all of the duct-related design items into a single section and clarified several key items. The biggest difference visually is that the room-by-room design airflows can be documented directly on the HVAC design report instead of in a separate document. Though for designers who would prefer to continue providing a separate document with the design airflows instead of writing them directly on the HVAC design report, that is acceptable as well. All right, so I know we covered a lot of ground on the HVAC design report, but I've saved the most important point for last. In Revision 8, the HVAC design report is the only design document that needs to be provided to the rater for a typical design. You no longer need to provide the following to the rater: full load calculations, an AHRI certificate, a separate ventilation design document, or a test and balance document. This should result in much less paperwork for everyone involved. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Dean to discuss the commissioning checklist.
Great.
Dean, you should have control.
Awesome. So let's move on to that HVAC commissioning checklist. As the name suggests, this contains all the items that the HVAC commissioning contractor needs to complete. Relative to the HVAC design report, these changes are pretty straightforward, so we're not going to spend as much time here. The checklist is divided into 4 sections, which are going to be listed here: the commissioning overview, refrigerant charge, indoor HVAC fan airflow, and air balancing of supply registers and return grills. So the commissioning overview is analogous to the design overview on the HVAC design report that Charlie walked you through. It simply documents the contractor's name, company, and date of commissioning, the organization that the contractor is credentialed with, which builder the designer is providing these services to, the address of the home, and finally, 2 items that tie the checklist back to the HVAC design report: the area that the system will serve, the house plan on the design, and whether the report represents a site-specific or a group design. So that's it for the first section. The second section is for refrigerant charge, and that's essentially identical to the last revision. You're still going to be doing a superheat or subcooling test in most cases and checking whether refrigerant charge is matching the OEM recommendations. So we're not going to spend time discussing that in more detail today. The third section is on the indoor HVAC fan airflow. It's also quite similar, though we've clarified several items and tied several of those back to information on the HVAC design report that's necessary for proper commissioning. And maybe the most important thing to note is that with revision 8, we've posted 5 short, brand new informational videos that discuss the value and process of measuring the HVAC fan airflow. So I'd really encourage you to follow this link and then click on the requirements and resources for contractors. You'll see these videos. Check them out, and hopefully they'll be helpful, and give us feedback if they are or if they are not. The fourth and final section of the HVAC commissioning checklist is air balancing of registers and grills. And in revision 8, the commissioning task is recommended but not required. This is a pretty difficult decision to make because it is a critical commissioning step. The reason we've made it a recommendation is that there are a number of precursors that must be done for balancing to work. So first, the ducts must be properly designed. Second, a strategy has to be selected, either dampers or right-sized duct runs for balancing to occur. Third, the ducts have to be installed according to the design. That doesn't always happen, surprisingly. And fourth, the contractor has to have the knowledge and the skills to measure the airflow and balance the system. Now, once all these precursors are in place, then the system can be successfully balanced. And so with revision 8, we've made this commissioning task a recommendation, but we continue to invest in those precursor steps. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get the program back to where that's mandatory for every home, but that's not where we are right now as a program. So these are the 4 sections of the new HVAC commissioning checklist. Hopefully, it should look pretty familiar to you already. And like the design side, we've simplified the commissioning process in a number of ways. So first, the requirement to take electrical measurements has been removed. The requirement to verify that HVAC controls meet OEM requirements has also been removed. These are important steps, but they aren't mandatory requirements any longer for ENERGY STAR certification. The requirement to visually inspect the HVAC drain pan has been moved to the water management system builder requirements. And to help streamline the certification process for everyone involved, several HVAC-related radar tasks have also been removed or made less stringent. And finally, we've made a change in the paperwork process to streamline certification. Contractors are still required to complete the HVAC commissioning checklist for each system and retain them for quality assurance purposes, just like today. However, they're only required to provide the completed checklist to the builder, the home energy rater, or the HVAC oversight organization upon request. So in some cases, you as a contractor might continue to provide this checklist for every home, for instance, if your rater is asking for that. But in other situations, you won't be asked for that for every home any longer. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to reiterate I want to actually talk through how to transition or update. I'm sorry. I have a few things to talk about. And the first thing is I want to talk about the updated process for certifying a home and the role that you'll play. So let's start with the process for designers. First, you'll obtain the relevant plan, options, and efficiency features from the builder or the home energy rater. Second, you'll either decide to do a site-specific or a group design. Next, you'll design the ventilation system, perform room-by-room load calculations, select the heating and cooling equipment, and design the duct system. And then once the design is complete, you'll just fill out the HVAC design report for each system and hand it over to the builder or the HVAC contractor into the home energy rater once per system design. Okay, so pretty straightforward and logical there. And now let's talk about the commissioning contractors. So first, just like today, you'll need to become credentialed to work on ENERGY STAR certified homes. Then to properly commission a system, you'll need some key design parameters. So to get that information, you need to obtain the HVAC design report from the HVAC designer. Once the HVAC system is started up, you can commission it and complete the HVAC commissioning checklist. Now remember that checking the refrigerant charge and the HVAC fan airflow is still required, just like it was under Revision 7, while testing and balancing room-by-room airflows is recommended but not required. And finally, retain the completed checklist in-house unless the builder, the home energy rater, or the HVAC oversight organization requests it. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is transitioning to Revision 8. In short, we think that Revision 8 is a big deal for designers. It's reducing the paperwork to a one-page report per design. It's clarifying key policies and streamlining your work. And we think it's a big deal for commissioning contractors as well. It reduces your paperwork to a single-page checklist, and it streamlines both your commissioning tasks and the certification process. But let's talk about when you have to start using Revision 8 and how to get from here to there. So generally, homes permitted starting July 1st of 2016 are required to use Revision 8 to be certified. There are two exceptions, though. In the Northwest, we have a regional program, and we're working on transitioning that from the regional set of program requirements to the national program. So as part of that transition, we've accelerated this timeline, and partners certifying homes using those regional program requirements are already required to use Revision 8 for any home that's permitted after July 1st of this year. And in Hawaii, Guam, and Puerto Rico, we also had a set of regional requirements, and we're working to update those checklists to reflect Revision 8. Now, for most of you, you're in the national program, and you have three options for certifying homes in the meantime. The first is to continue using Revision 7. We'll talk about that in more detail on the next slide. The second is that you can use all of Revision 8 except for the Revision 8 HVAC design report. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Or you can use all of Revision 8 today. Okay, so first option, if you really want to, you can keep using Revision 7 for all homes permitted prior to July 1st, 2016. You can also use Revision 7 with some simplifications from Revision 8. And you can find details about which simplifications these are in our policy record at the link here. This will show you basically how to use Revision 7, but take advantage of some of the improvements in Revision 8. The second option is to start using Revision 8 except for the HVAC design report. Almost all the partners we've talked to want to start using Revision 8 as soon as possible. But we know that designers need time to transition to the new HVAC design report. And so to make the transition easier, we're effectively allowing a combination of Revision 7 and Revision 8 to be used during this transition period. So this allows you to take advantage of most of Revision 8 while giving designers more time to update their design documentation. And you can find detailed guidance about this also in our policy record by following this link. Okay, so that's the first two options. Third option, why wait? So the third option is to use all of Revision 8 as soon as you're ready. Just two quick notes on this. Once you transition to Revision 8, you need to meet all the requirements of Revision 8, even during this transition year. So for example, once a designer starts using Revision 8, the HVAC design report, for example, you can no longer use the next nominal size. That no longer applies because it's not a part of the Revision 8 HVAC design report. Okay, so that's what we have for you today. Hopefully this gives you a pretty strong start with Revision 8, but there's always more to learn and additional resources to help you succeed. So I want to discuss a few next steps you can take. First, if you haven't already done so, get the HVAC design report and the HVAC commissioning checklist by downloading it from our website. The link is right here. You can look at the actual documents and make sure you get familiar with them. Second, to help you out, you can review the Revision 8 highlights document, crosswalk document, and detailed version tracking document. These are all resources that help you understand what's changed between Revision 7 and Revision 8. You can certainly learn more by attending future webinars. We plan to do some additional HVAC-related ones in the fall and winter. And you can ask us questions by writing into us here at Energy Star Homes at energystar.gov. Okay, so that's what we have for you. A few additional links to our website are here, along with that email address we mentioned, energystarhomes at energystar.gov. You can follow us on social media, and the contact information for Charlie and myself are on the right-hand side. So we'll open it up for questions now. Charlie's going to start looking through any questions that came in while we were presenting, and we'll see what we can answer.
First and most common question is that we will be sending out a PDF copy of today's presentation to everyone that attended. We also did record the presentation today. If you'd like a copy of the recording, please email us at energystarhomes@energystar.gov and we can get you the recording. So a couple questions have come in here, Dean. Again, if you haven't written your question in and would like to, you can do so now in the questions pane. Somebody wants to know if the Section 5 of the HVAC design checklist, if you're supposed to input the worst case layout for the duct design, or if there's some other way they should be entering it there.
Effectively, you can. So we're asking you to fill out one HVAC design report for each HVAC system design. So you've already specified loads that are within the tolerances we described in terms of square footage and window area and that sort of thing. You've selected your equipment based on those loads, and then you're designing the duct system to deliver the air from that equipment that you've selected. So essentially, you can include the maximum airflow to that duct design associated with that equipment selection. You don't have to, for instance, provide a separate set of duct airflow targets for every orientation of the house. So hopefully that helps answer your question. We know that some designers will go above and beyond that and actually, specify different duct designs and different airflow targets for every orientation, which is really great. That's one of the key reasons you might have some comfort issues in a particular room, is by not targeting those to specific orientations, but that would be above and beyond our minimum requirements right now. And while Charlie's looking for the next question, I'll say if that didn't answer your question, or in general, if we don't answer your questions effectively on the webinar today, feel free to write into us and we can follow up with you with more information.
We have somebody asking about the design temperature chart, and if they have any questions about the design temperature or location selected for their county, who they should contact. You can write into us. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it, Charlie.
You can write into us at EnergyStarHomes at EnergyStar.gov, and we'll definitely look into whatever issue you're finding, or if you're requesting a variance from that temperature, from that design temperature, we can help you with that as well. Okay, here's a more detailed one. If a rater becomes a ACA credentialed contractor, can they sign off on the HVAC commissioning a contractor's work? And can they do the HVAC design report as well?
Yes, right now there's nothing precluding a contractor or a rater, for that matter, from wearing more than one hat, as long as you're meeting the requirements for each organization. For instance, most of the oversight organizations require that you be, an actual credentialed contractor that's selling HVAC equipment. And then there's, of course, separate requirements through ResNet for raters. As long as you can satisfy all the requirements for each role that you're serving, then that is acceptable.
Okay, anything else I'm seeing that's coming in is just really specific question. Again, if we don't answer your question on the call today, definitely write into EnergyStarHomes@EnergyStar.gov, and we will get an answer for you. You can wait another minute here and see if anyone else has a question.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see if anything else comes in. And if you attended the webinar today and you feel like you need more guidance on specific topics, or you think other topics for webinars would be helpful around the HVAC design and commissioning process, let us know, and we'll definitely factor that in for our future planning for webinars and training. Anything else, Charlie?
Nope, nothing else has come in.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit in. Hopefully you learned something new, and we'll make it easier to meet Energy Star going forward. We're pretty excited about Revision 8. We've had a really enthusiastic response from partners so far, and we think it's going to make everyone's lives a little bit easier in certifying homes. And I hope you'll find the same. All right, have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.